Yeah, we're kinda, like, just on the shared document. I guess, I don't know, we've had some, I don't know, off the record talks via text about just offense, and I know, like, me and you have, like, talked about offense a lot over the years and just, like, understanding, like, the innovation and how the game is changing and specifically, like, Minnesota compared to, maybe, like, hotbed areas
Mhm.
and then maybe Minnesota compared to even more developing areas and just, like, how every area just seems to be teaching the game a different way. Um, and, I think there's been a lot more, I guess, push for free play or kind of principles based offense. That's, what Jamie Monroe calls it, whether you want to call that free flowing, unstructured, or just a little bit more, um, I don't know, more freedom than a set play or a traditional motion based offense. There's many ways to win games and have a successful program. So I don't know, just general thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think so. The three like latest hot trends, like everything's kind of copycat. But the biggest buzzwords lately have been that principles based play, constraints, and then this kind of newer emerging one, ecological dynamics. So you mentioned Jamie Monroe. He actually changed his podcast format. And he's talking more like kind of getting into deeper conversations with a lot of these high level coaches. So I'm sure you listen to it, but anyone else who's seeing this, like, strongly recommend to check that out after. But the ideas, right, are all around like how do you actually acquire and then identify when to use certain skills, and then how can you use that to accelerate, player development, kind of innovate and expand what your options are in terms of like different offense or defensive principles. And it's been really cool to see like some of these high level, NESCAC, Ivy League, ACC, Big Ten coaches talking more and more about it. But
Yeah.
one of the funny things is like now that it is the buzzword, I've heard so many coaches be like, "Yeah, we're principles based offense, and my principles are run these four plays again and again and again." So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the framework or the groundwork, but the big three like buzz terms I've heard more and more: ecological dynamics, constraints approach, principles based play. I've been trying to push this, and like we've been talking about this for the last probably 4-ish years. So it's been really cool to see that like conversation get taken further by guys doing it full time. One of the big things that I've seen is kind of the death of like sets.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's value in guys, knowing where their teammates are, knowing where like they're going to swing it. But really, like if you look at what Notre Dame is doing, what Syracuse is doing, they're swinging between having zero, one, or two guys on the crease frequently. They're kind of playing more in like groupings as opposed to in a set. I can't remember who said it, but there was a great interview with an offensive coordinator, and he was saying if you can recognize what set we're in, then our players did it wrong. And I just like I love that approach.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've kind of been advocating for or utilizing is like instead of having a we're going to run a 2-3-1 or we're going to run a 3-1-2 or a 1-4-1, breaking it down into groupings. So you could have a group of three, a group of two, solo man at X. You can run that kind of pairs based offense that people have been doing for the last kind of decade or so. Or the newer one, and what we've talked about a lot lately is like trips, right? Two groups of three,
Yeah.
get to your preferred hand as much as you can, and then have a library of 3-man actions that they can run. A lot of these kind of the new fundamentals of player development or how you should structure your offenses, or even defensive principles too. A lot of them come from basketball, and like
Yeah.
there are a lot more people getting paid full-time salaries to do this in basketball. So like one of those names, Alex Sarama, if you've heard me talk or heard you talk, like that name has come up. He was the French national basketball coach. He actually got hired by Brown to be a consultant for all their sports, and now he's the director of player development for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So like
Yeah.
a lot of these, like the true bleeding edge, razor's edge of innovation is coming from basketball. And then I think it kind of proliferates down into box and then into the field games.
Like I like all of that, and like the game definitely has been trending more that way. Um And you mentioned something like coaches are saying like, okay, we're a principles based offense, and then it's like we're really not.
Yeah.
And I actually had a weird kind of interaction with players recently where they're starting to hear all this stuff and like they watch, a young kid is going to watch a Syracuse game, or they're going to watch the Notre Dame team play, or the chaos or the PLL, because
Right,
like
right,
those are the
right.
guys they look up to, and they go, wow, like free flow, that's what I want to do. It'd be so great if my coach let me play that way. So they push for it, and then you get out on the field and go, okay, this is principles based offense. Go, here are the actions, and
Yep.
then the first time they run into a problem, well, where am I supposed to go? I don't know what to do. Like, you didn't tell me where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just an interesting conundrum, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And you kind of mentioned it at the top, like how different areas are teaching the game. I've gotten a lot more blank stares or confusion. So I moved down to Texas at the end of last summer. I'm coaching down here in the Houston area, and uh, like here, the game is taught very structured. There's a lot of that kind of football influence. There's a lot of early sports specialization here. Like Texas is crazy. But
Yeah.
in Minnesota, I think one of the advantages you do have, and one of the reasons why, like, I don't really buy the "we're not a hotbed" excuse, is like you've got a lot of hockey players who could kind of just like free flow and play the game. Um, and I kind of have this on like my list to talk about later, but this excuse or this like defeatist attitude that we can't teach it that way because we're not Colorado or Maryland or upstate New York. Like I think it's kind of bullshit because you've got the Jack Van Overbeeks, the Connor Hoolies, the Danny Burks who are like dominating at the highest level of professional and college lacrosse.
Yeah.
Um, Now the flip side, right, is like your mighty middle and your lower end players that just, took the tag off their stick at Dix, like they're quite a ways behind what we see at the top.
Yeah.
But I think that's like a fun dynamic with this too, where I've found it easier to teach an action to like a group of three people or to teach a couple actions to a group of two people than it is to get six guys all on the same page doing the same thing. When one of those guys is like Connor Hooley and the other guy is a kid who's learning how to cradle. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's easier and it gives you more options to, like get the bag deeper for your guys who are really into it. And then kind of go a little bit slower for some of those newer guys. The other thing that I think with that and kind of where I wanted to go initially is like in practice. So much emphasis, right, on like how it works in the game. Like, oh, I don't know where to go, or like let's make it look like this whiteboard coming out of this timeout. But like where I think this constraints, ecological dynamics and constraints approach and all that, like where it's been the most fun and the most impactful is at practice. Um, so it allows you to be kind of a little less video gamey on game day, but then you have a lot more levers you can pull in practice to make it a realistic stretch. When a freshman D pole is going up against Danny Burke, um, like you can manipulate their starting location. You turn him away from the play. Maybe you have a double, and as soon as he splits that double, that guy falls out of the drill, and you play 6-on-6 or 6-on-5, whatever it is. But I think there's like a lot more things you can do to give to make it difficult where they're not winning the rep all the time. But then
Yeah.
for these newer guys, you're magnifying their advantage. So then they learn what to do once their skills kind of do catch up with it and they are able to get a step on a guy. Like, okay, we've now just created an affordance or created an advantage. How do we maintain and extend that?
Yeah.
And I think it's like it's tough when a lot of you see some, oh, we're gonna run 1v1s, we're gonna run 2v2s, whatever, and like guys can't even get to the point of understanding how to, keep the dominoes falling, keep the play moving, extend that advantage when like they're going up against a senior pole who's committed and they can't get a step on them.
Yeah.
Uh, and for that senior pole, right, you're wasting their time because when they do get to the next level, those get like they're not just going to physically dominate everybody. So I think that's been, in my opinion, the most fun and exciting part about this kind of new approach to coaching is in practice, you have all these little levers you can pull to make it to where a kid is winning the rep like 60% of the time.
Yeah, and you know, I've talked about this with my high school staff, and a colleague of mine, or staff, coaching colleague of
Mhm.
mine said, you know, running an offense like this is like long term great, but short term it can be frustrating because like there's going to be growing pains, especially if, like you said, if you have six All Americans, like
Yeah.
they're going to be able to get their hands free and do these things. But if you have one All American, four middle guys, and a guy that you have to put in there because you don't have anybody else, now
Right.
you're going to run into the same issues as you would trying to run a motion offense where one guy kind of doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I liked what he said. He's like, I think it's great, and I like the ideas behind it, but we have to be okay with turnovers, with not,
Mhm.
it not looking good in month one or maybe even month two. But if it's good in June or at
Yeah.
playoff time, and I think kind of goes back to like coaches, like players kind of are like after one rep and it doesn't work and it's like this set doesn't work. Coaches do that too, where it's like our identity this year is going to be free flowing offense, and then as soon as you play like shit and you have 50 turnovers and you score 2 goals, you're like, we're going back to whatever, down the alley through X, hit the
Yep.
backside. And sure, you might score 6 goals the next game, but your ceiling is going to be 6 goals for the rest of the year, instead of maybe like living through some pain of
Yeah.
3 and 4 goal performances, but then scoring 13 and 14 once everybody gets it.
I'm getting like flashbacks of like 2022.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought I repressed it, but yeah, no, 100%, and like totally have been there, have kind of fought that fight. Um, but like, okay, Minnesota, every team makes their section tournament,
yep,
right?
yep,
And um, like you've got to win your section to go to state. So if you lose a, you know, April 10th game, do you really care that much in the grand scheme of things? Like, I just think it is, yes, a little bit grueling or daunting or intimidating or whatever. Um, but I think like the most important part is this is this is backed by academicians getting paid a lot more money to do it than we are as high school coaches.
yeah,
This is being done at the NCAA level. And I know you can make the argument of like, yeah, but they can just handpick their guys, whatever. Like, there's some mid tier D3 guys that are looking for warm bodies, right? Like, there's a reason people are doing this stuff. And I do think it is a big misconception of like a constraints led approach or a principles based offense that like you have to already be good or already have these fundamentals, like these boxes checked to be able to play. This teaches those things faster. And
yeah,
like, yes, there are still going to be growing pains, but there's growing pains, like the difference is it's maybe happening shittily versus it's just not happening at all.
yeah, yeah,
Where it's like, run the play. This doesn't look like what I drew. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, well, there's not a
yeah,
path to achievement with that. Like,
yeah,
either they did it or they didn't do it. This one,
yeah,
they at least can take kind of those baby steps. And um, I don't know. Like, I mean, again, I'm not trying to say this is the answer. I've solved coaching. I've broke lacrosse, but or like,
yeah,
Gary Byrne broke lacrosse or Jamie Monroe cracked the game, and it's not like,
yeah,
no. This is still a discussion. This is still an evolution. I still have a lot of things where, like, example, teaching shooting or like passing form.
yeah,
I haven't found a great way to do that in a ecological environment. Um, and kind of fall back on like putting kids into positions and teaching it how the YouTube video or the coach taught me. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's still a lot of room to grow and figure this out. And then like, yeah, that example you gave of how do we get this big crazy dynamic change and like kind of spoon feed it a little bit or meet kids where they are, like, again, that's what's fun to me is there's a lot of room to grow with that, and it's not just video game controlling a guy from the bench.
yeah. I watched a presentation of Bobby Benson from this past IMLCA, and it was just a Q&A session, and, he said for those that don't know, he's a head coach at Providence College, a mid-major D1 program, but still getting Division I caliber lacrosse players.
Mhm.
He takes a lot from basketball, and someone said like, "Okay, like, do you like to let your players play, or are you more structured?" And he's like, "Well, the goal is we want to be free flowing. We want to let them play. And if I and they're like, he's like, oh, okay, like, so then like what happens if it's not working?" And then he goes, "Then we run set plays. Then we have like this kind of this bag of 6 to 8 set things that we always practice.
Yeah.
And like if I can go out on a Saturday and not have to call a play and we're scoring and guys are making the reads," he's like, "Fantastic. I would love to just sit back on game day and not have to coach. Like that's the ultimate goal." But he's like, "If we're playing like shit, I'm calling set plays." So I loved the blend of like kind of meeting them halfway of like,
Yeah.
I'll let
We
you
have
guys
that in
know.
our quiver if we need it, but, like, let's
Yeah.
not have to break glass if we don't have
Like,
an emergency.
well, like structure, PMAC mentioned this in one of our podcast episodes of we were talking about Syracuse, and, they've kind of been in a 2-game skid, and, everybody's questioning it right now. Like, oh, like they don't play as a team. They're just out there playing street ball. And he's like, maybe they don't really seem to ever have like a structure to fall back on
Yeah.
when a team is like the whole week, the team is going to be planning on how to stop their skill and their offense. So they're just going to try to junk it up on defense. And
Right.
so I kinda like that, and I think you maybe presented this at the summit, or you said it to me, but, like, the idea of a scripted opener
Mhm.
for your offense to say, like, "Alright, we're gonna have a few things that we practice a lot and, like, everybody knows what to do," where
Yeah.
there's not I don't wanna say there's not a read, but, like, maybe it's an easy read, like, this is option 1, this is option 2, and then kill it if it's not there, but all
Mhm.
6 guys practice it every practice, and they know. So it's like we can start with that. It's a
Yeah.
structure to fall back on, or it could be a scripted ender too, a scripted closer of like, we don't have a shot clock, but like, okay, we're getting a possession, we're trying all this stuff, maybe we miss a couple shots or it's not going well. Okay, it's been a minute or two. Okay, let's run something now that we all
Mhm.
know, but you don't have to like call it right away, and all right, we're
Right.
gonna get the ball around 3 times, and then we're gonna run our play, and then if
Yep.
that doesn't work, we're gonna call a timeout, we're gonna run another play.
Yep.
Like, so it's a balance between letting players play lacrosse and maybe having some robotic things so that
Yeah.
you can, because you're trying to win games, so, like, you gotta
Right.
at some point do it, right?
But I would maybe challenge or extend that in the goal of that should be to diagnose something, right? So maybe it's like we are going to start the first possession of the game. We're going to get the ball through X and we're going to run a nation's look,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're seeing how the defense is handling picks, where their two is coming from. Are they jumping? Are they doubling? Are they going underneath? Like whatever it is. But like, and I think that's kind of that can give players some confidence too to be like, oh, I've seen this thing happen. I know in my kind of bank of knowledge when the defense does this, here's how we beat it. And I know we've talked about this like at length. The offense, like the team with the ball is correct, you know? Like you get to decide what happens. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, there are some ways the defense can dictate what's going on, but like they're trying to weather the storm or get the ball back, right?
Yeah.
And so like hopefully that becomes a confidence builder for kids to say, okay, when they play it like this, we have an answer to every question. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I love that too. It's just at some like it's this weird equation of like offense gets to dictate, like the race begins when you want it to, the famous
Mhm.
uh Coach Donahue quote. So it's like we should be dictating. The defense can then sort of say we're taking away X,
Mhm.
or we're going to do this thing, and then it kind of goes to that next step of then, okay, defense is taking away X, I have to go find Y or Z. So it's
Mhm.
this balance between and Jamie Monroe said it of offensively, we don't know where the look is going to come from. That's the whole idea of principles based offense.
Yes.
But our job is to create advantages and find the look. But if we don't know where it's going to come from on offense, the defense most certainly doesn't know where it's going to come from. So that's what makes it great, like in a pure form
Yeah.
of we're going to set picks and we're going to clear out and we're going to ghost and we're going to do things all around and cause confusion somebody will get open at some point. It's our job to find that. And like
Yes.
the D might say, we're gonna put a guy right on the crease and we're not gonna let them get any shots right in front of the net. Okay, well then there might be somebody open 12 yards away for a step
Right.
down.
Right.
And so I liked that. Um, speaking of like screen setting, before we get on the whiteboard, I've been watching a lot more. You talked about basketball and like people get paid a lot more to develop these systems, right? And the idea of pick setting and screen setting, I feel like that's an entire chapter, or maybe that's an entire volume in the encyclopedia of basketball development of
Yeah.
just how to set picks and like types of picks you can set and where and when and why.
Yeah.
And in lacrosse, I only know in Minnesota because that's the only place I've coached. But we just it's just a pick that there's one thing, and it's
Or
like
maybe there's a razor pick and that,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
but it's those 2 things, yeah.
It's like the idea of a pick is just this, I run, I tap my helmet, which drives me
I
absolutely
hold my stick
insane.
like this.
Yeah, hold my stick like this because we've been taught picks from a, um, almost like a rule, like an officiating perspective.
Yes.
And so it's like you have to
That's
do
just too much.
this thing, and so
Yeah.
I'm gonna set a pick, and it's gonna be 30 yards from the goal, and it's gonna be me going, doing this or one hand, now I'm not even a threat as a picker at this point. I'm
Yeah.
just standing there, and then, maybe we get to the Dodger needs to go shoulder to shoulder, and like that's it.
Yep.
It's that then there's okay, then after volume 1 of pick setting, there's a whole nother volume of what do you do after the pick has been set? Like it's an entire trilogy probably of pick setting.
Mhm.
And I've been so interested about how much information there is on screen setting in and the types that are available in basketball because it's a smaller space. Um and it's obviously harder. I don't want to say harder to score, but like there's a lot more shots and possessions, but like it's hard to score in basketball and get open shots because you know guys can cover a lot more space.
Yeah.
You can't just run past somebody and clear out a space in basketball. Like you
Right.
have to get other guys open. So I don't know, maybe some thoughts on just like screen setting in general and like are you doing anything to teach that,
Mhm.
to your guys? Because like, the last thing a high school lacrosse player wants to do is spend a day on screen setting.
Yeah. No, I love the point, and I'm 100% stealing it of like we teach it from the referee's perspective because that has been something that drives me absolutely insane. And
I knew
I
it
even
would.
said it in a my kids practice the other day down here. Like, who taught all of you guys to set picks? Because the sword and the stone thing, where you're just standing, like it's stupid, and I don't understand where or what, like where you got that from. But also like this idea that you're taking a guy out of the play, I think is very common. I've noticed that a lot here down in Texas is like there's this resistance to it that I didn't find as much in Minnesota. Maybe it's because there's more guys like playing and around the box game because it's in hockey rinks. I don't know what it is. I think there's a long way to go in Minnesota, but here it's weird because they're like, no, picks don't work. And it's like, okay, well, we're probably just not doing it effectively. Um, I do think though there's big opportunity in teaching it as a skill that is going to get the pick setter more points. And I think a lot of times it's taught as like you're the obstacle for the ball carrier to get a step.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know, like the adage I've been using lately is you want to be selfless with the ball, selfish with it. So teaching it more like a skill that is going to get the pick setter goals and assists. Um, and again, like the kind of term I use with it that I think has gotten kids at least a little bit more interested in it is like be more selfless when you have the ball, be more selfish when you don't. Like I'm using
Yeah.
this to get either 0 people on me or 2 people on me, and then from there, I might be open for my own shot. I think too, there's like an element or a layer of just awareness that there is more than just sword in the stone. Like
Yeah.
there's a certain way you can hold your hand. There are swing picks, like let's get really good at repicking. Let's get really good at how we approach the pick, not just coming straight up, but getting into the middle first. So you're kind of on that guy's back pocket. Um, let's start slipping picks more effectively. Maybe there's an opportunity to hit a bee sting or off the ball, kind of those, legal moving picks where you're kind of just more so cutting to a space and then cutting behind someone. Like I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of nuances to it. And I think this is a great example of something that can be taught with like a free play type drill. One of the ones I've seen, and I've done it a couple of times, it works okay. I think this is from Albany, but they do that small sided, I've heard cones of silence, the gauntlet, right? But
Yeah.
like in the version that I saw, they were like, there's no such thing as a moving screen when we do this drill for the next 5 minutes. And you'll see guys like kind of lead blocking or leaning or whatever. And then obviously you have to teach that out. But I just think it's a good way to like get people to start kind of thinking of it as there's a like behavioral science thing there of this idiosyncratic fit. I have this unique advantage now that I can do that I couldn't do before, and I'm going to use my cheat code. So I think like stuff like that are fun ways to do it. Obviously, you do have to balance it, and there is some, we want to be setting legal picks. We don't want to be getting called for a moving pick every time, but I think you can have some leeway in practice, and it can be a fun variation.
Yeah, yeah, no, I like that, and I think again in basketball too, and I think in Bobby Benson's presentation he talked about this too a little bit of like if I'm gonna cut for the ball and cut through the middle, like when I come back out, I have to set a screen for somebody off ball.
Hmm.
So it's like when you're going from inside out, you set a screen for somebody else, and when you're going from outside in, you're cutting
You're
off
cutting,
somebody.
yeah,
And I thought that like that was a good like again rule of thumb like if you're thinking about high school athletes of like they kind of have to have some sort of rule of thumb that they're like kind
yeah.
of focused on. So it's like all right, clear through, we always say that to these guys, clear out, clear out, clear through. So they do, and then they're just again existing. They just
Hmm.
jog through the middle, they take their defender away, and we isolate and hope that we win our matchup. And what I've found as a high school coach is like you're not always going to be the more athletic team.
Right.
Like there's going to be teams that are more athletic than you, and you're not winning a one-on-one matchup against most of their guys.
Yeah.
Okay. So or at maybe better case scenario, it's a 50-50. Like maybe they have one or two guys on the field that maybe aren't as good athletically that you can win a matchup, but the D coordinator on the other team knows that too. So they're going
Hmm.
to send the help. They're going to prepare for those guys to get beat more
Right.
often. So how do you create advantages if you can't just run by somebody? All right. If that was that easy, we'd all be great offensive coordinators.
Yeah.
All right. But then it's like, how do I get somebody open? So it's like clear out. That's kind of phase one. Like if you're open, great. It's probably not going to happen. And then going and setting a screen from a clear through or a cut,
Yeah.
that's going to be more deceptive again than running, tapping our helmet, sword in the stone. And
Yeah.
like, so like picks, like on ball hard picks in field lacrosse, like they don't work really essentially because there's so much space, but
Hmm.
there's a million ways to set a pick. And that's where I'm kind of going. It's like there's a whole book on screen setting and like I
Yeah.
love how you said that with like to like kind of get the kids to buy in is like you can score a lot more goals like being a great screen setter because
Right.
they think you're just like demoting them to I just set screens, like that's all I
Yeah.
do.
Exactly. No, 100%. And I do think, yeah, there is some truth in it, right? Like these high corner of the box or like behind the goal where the guy is just stationary after
Yeah.
picks don't work as well as they do in something like basketball or box scout where you do have a little bit more leeway to lean and kind of
Yeah.
create that contact. Um, but I mean, if you're just going to ghost it or slip it, like great opportunity there to get a free step. If maybe the ball carrier uses it and then comes back or denies the pit. Like there are still little mini advantages you can get. Sure, is it going to jump off the page and give you 4 steps? Probably not,
No.
right? But like it can be the first domino that starts the chain. Um,
Yeah.
it gets the guy's hands free to throw a skip pass or move it on to the backside and dodge or whatever. Like um, this skill of probing, Jamie Monroe talks about it a ton. Uh, I think the easiest way to like understand what that means is just watch Jeff Teat play lacrosse. But like dodging without dodging and putting pressure on the defense, like guys can sit behind a pick, or you can have some screens happening off ball where like that becomes really, really, really concerning for defenses. And again, are you gonna get a chunk of the guy, knock him off his feet, and get 4 steps and hammer it from 10 from an on ball pick? Probably not. But
Yeah.
does that give you some time to get your hands free, or kind of find the next domino or find the next thing in your chain? I do think there's still value in that.
Yeah, actually, at like training this past week, we did like a two man shooting drill. So like the first phase was pass down, pick down, dodge over the top, hit the pick and roll to
Hmm.
like the finish. So like everybody's done that, right?
Yep.
So like they were doing it, and it was like immediately as they caught the pass down and the pick was coming, they were like going like just
Yeah.
right away. And it works, right? There's no defense, and like it can still look pretty good.
Hmm.
Phase two was ghosting it, so they would pass down, go pretend it to set the pick, and for those that don't know the term, like a slip pick or a ghost pick, they'd go and act like they were going to set it, and they just break to the net for a give and go,
Hmm.
and it looked like shit for the first 2 minutes because the Dodger the Dodger was utilizing kind of the previous phase of I'm gonna go right away, and he was gonna like kind of fake a pick, and like then the slip would go, but they would be like at this weird angle of
Yes.
like throwing like over the shoulder when they
Hmm.
needed more like width space. So I was
Yeah.
like, you need to kind of double threat, like dance a little bit and act like you're gonna like dodge off the pick, but you're knowing that it's actually not gonna happen. And then as soon as he breaks, then you just hit him.
Right.
And it was like it was one tiny like nuance change, and then now everybody's hitting that give and go like way easier. And before, like they were like trying to be like basket catch over the shoulder baseball
Yeah.
style. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, like just how one like that probing, like you talked about that probing. It's kind of that like I'm gonna act like I'm gonna start dodging on you, but I know that that screen guy is gonna break, and then I'll just hit him.
Yeah. I think a fun example of this, some people might know Will McKinney. He Indiana Tech. He plays in literally every men's
Yeah,
league possible. He's on the Wheat Kings, and when he first started playing box, he was saying like the hardest thing to do was to slow down a little bit because I
yeah,
wanted to dodge like how I dodged in field. And honestly, like for as incredible of an athlete as he is, incredible lacrosse player, like he wasn't really all that effective at it. But then he's kind of slowed down and he got really good at that drift and then use his explosiveness to get the step once, a pick was there, once guys, manipulated the defense to where he could get to a shooting spot. And like it just you see him now doing it in field too. And yeah, it's
yeah,
different. It's men's league, but like he's playing in that NLA and he's like in some of these national level tournaments, and it's made him so much better when he just, hey, I'm going to slow down a little bit. I have the speed, but the good thing about having speed like that, Hooley does it all the time too. You see it at Drexel, like you don't have to use it all the time. And like playing at 75%, like his 75% is faster than a lot of kids' 75%.
yeah,
So then when he does do the little burst of going 90, right? Like that he's breaking guys off and getting his hands free.
yeah,
So I think that just this idea of like slowing down a little bit, playing off of a guy. One other thing though that I do think is important, you were talking about the angle. So if you get to the point where that guy who did set the pick is kind of behind you and you're throwing that across your body pass, or the other way where they're slipping it, you're coming up field and it's got to be this weird kind of awkward over the shoulder for them to have their stick to the middle. Um, I think one of the biggest game changers and something I think we're going to continue to see more and more of is just kind of that nations adjacent type concept of throw the ball forward and let your swing guy pass the ball to the pick setter.
yeah,
Um, it does like an effective 2-man game does not have to be I came off that pick and I shot or I passed to you as the guy who set the pick. A lot of times it can be throw the ball across to the next guy, right? You're passing the ball forward. It's really easy to do that. He can then make the read. Maybe it's a give back to you, or he's hitting the guy who set the pick for you. Um, again, it's kind of like Nations 101, but this idea that that should be, if you get to a point where you're flat or off, like if you get too staggered with your guy, your thought should just be throw the ball forward.
Yeah.
Um, and again, an easier pass to catch. It keeps the defense moving. If we end up not having that step that we maybe thought we did, we can now one more that and dodge the backside. But like it gives us so many more options to make an easy play. And then again, kind of like this idea of cut through and then go set one. It's just like a good, easy, not really rule, but like guideline within your offense of okay, we're off. I'm not going to try to throw that pass.
Yeah.
Kick the ball forward, or that's like maybe I'm bouncing and rolling out and we're trying it again. But like we don't. It does not have to be. I'm sure you see this, and we see it a lot in man up, especially like ball goes to the crease guy. Like it's either a goal or a turnover. Like it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And I know you've done some cool things with that, kind of borrowing a little bit from Syracuse and kind of putting your own spin on it there, where like ball can go into the crease and back out. We
Yeah.
can run a 2-man game, and it doesn't have to go to the pick setter, or it doesn't have to be a carry
Yeah.
and a shot. Like we can move the ball on, and maybe that advantage will become magnified once all the heads turn.
You can run a pick and roll on the
Mhm.
ball side, and then you like you said, swing it forward. So use the pick and roll to create action on one side to get the defense to that side of the field, because they're going to set a pick and try to dodge to the net,
Mhm.
or hit a pick and roll. So there's a tension over there, and if you just swing it forward, if like maybe you want one of your better athletes that has a matchup to isolate.
Right.
Well, don't just give them the ball and say, okay, carry it up to the 45 and just run downhill.
Yeah.
Well, like put your best player on one side of the field, run 2-man game with the other guys that maybe won't win the matchup, and then
Mhm.
just zip it across to like your guy that has
And now
the
you're just
good
going
matchup.
without it too. Yeah.
And now it's an isolation with a closeout, so it's a much
Mhm.
harder defensive breakdown, where especially if it's a size advantage, like okay, now I can just bull dodge you because you're coming out at me. Or like if you got a crafty guy that can go skinny, and use that. But yeah, then the two isn't there, and like everybody was so worried about the pick and roll when it was really just you're just running action to just again manipulate the defense.
Right.
So and that's, as coaches we see that on the whiteboard, but I think kids have a hard, at least in Minnesota, like where like the lax IQ might be a little bit lower, like collectively, of like
Mhm.
if I get called to dodge on this play, I have to be the one to score the goal or take the shot. When it's
Right.
like we can do 1,000 things on one side and get a ball reversal to set up somebody else on that's like
Yeah.
presumably from the public, the public eye, that guy's just standing over there. Well, it's like no, he's open. In football, we see it like they'll motion a guy to the left and they'll run trips and all this shit on the left. But hey, Randy Moss is on the right. He's just going to run deep. And like we're just isolating one on one over there.
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. And that I wish there was the second assist in field
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah.
Like, right? Because a lot of times that's what creates the goal. And I do think this was kind of part of, I think, the last summit. We talked a lot about this after, but like recognize that and reward that, like
Yeah.
in film.
Yeah.
This action over here is what created that. Like,
Yeah.
good on these guys. We're going to track hockey assists, or we're going to track initial dominoes, or however you want to term it. And like shout it out, make it important.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, rewarding, what you measure and what you reward is what you're gonna get out of your team. I think that's something you were saying. I'm gonna share the screen here. So I got like I guess like this little offense defense here. So the circles are the O, the
Yep.
green is the guy with the ball, and then the red are the D. And one thing that I was thinking about, so like, you know, if this guy goes to set a pick and this guy's dodging,
Yep.
I think it's this guy right here that can get in the way. Sometimes he's still on this side of the field, like
Yep.
because this defenseman, like if you get over the top, like this guy's just going to steal a little bit of space and then he'll snap back if you move it, and then, like, you're not really a threat up here. So, like, what would you suggest, like, the action is for maybe, like, the 3rd guy in a on a side that's maybe not doing anything in that particular moment?
Right. So, I mean, this may be cheating the question a little bit, but I wouldn't necessarily want to go from here, right? Because for this guy to come off of a pick, he has no real underneath, right? Like this is
Yeah,
not enough of an angle for him to take.
yeah,
Like he pretty much has to go top side. If
yeah,
you're more at the wing, right, you've got this two-way go where, like you said, if he does drag up and get skinny, he still has enough of an angle to shoot.
yeah.
So that would kind of be the first thing. Again, I know that's kind of cheating the
No,
question.
no, I think it's good.
I think it is an important thing. The other thing, and we talked a little bit about this the other day, um, our picks don't always have to come from the immediate adjacent guy, right? So
Yeah,
this guy could be a clear through, and then maybe you have this top corner man as your pick setter.
yeah,
Um, Again, if you kind of want to use that, throw the ball forward. This guy can cut through. You got this guy popping out to be the one who you hit. I think that's fair. Again, that's kind of going a little bit into the kind of like the
yeah.
201. Um, I think a clear through from, whoa, I'm changing his shape here. He got skinny. A clear through is just fine, right? If we're adamant on going there, this guy's got some space. Maybe you have again that exchange, or these guys even just coming together and then and breaking out, and you're using this guy as kind of your third, like your swing man.
Yeah.
Um,
That
again,
clear through guy could maybe set a screen for this low left guy. Like, so he could clear through and
hmm
then seal off this guy to come
hmm
off. So, like, the 2 adjacent guys here are maybe, like, coming together or exchanging just to kinda do something, but, like, you're actually gonna have this guy cut through. Obviously, if it's, like, there, if he beats his guy to the net and there's space, hit him, but then set like is that like a RAM screen or something like that, or a I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's like in basketball sometimes they clear someone all the way through to the other
Yep.
side to go set a screen to like someone else in the other corner.
Yeah, that'd be the Ram, right? So like the kind of really basketball-y one here is you're coming there, and then your pass either for a dodge or for a shot is coming off of that.
Yeah,
Um, I think that's, yeah, valid for sure. He could kind of seal off here. You got now some options over there as well. You got options for this guy to cut through.
yeah,
This guy can bump up and be your pass. Like again, but just introducing that third man and making him important. Like we just drew through what I think were, 8 viable looks in like 20 seconds, and
yeah,
just find the one that, you gravitate towards or you think your kids can do. Um, and then again, just by like talking about and making considerations for, okay, we've got our two-man action, but it's not just these two guys. What else are we doing to support that? Where do we have the, kind of easy outlet if we don't have it right away from here? How can we throw the ball forward and make these passes easier? And then just again give ourselves some additional options for these other four guys, so they're not just standing and watching two people play.
yeah, and that's a good point. I think the like hard thing is that it's always been no matter whether you're running a traditional offense or a set or a motion, and or you're just kind of being more free flowing and kind of saying like we're just gonna morph into whatever. We don't really have a set. Again, principles based versus set based or motion based is like getting the other 4 guys to not be spectators or the other 3 guys to not be spectators, because that's where essentially success is going to come in an offense, is always going to be everybody doing something. And like I think that's why maybe coaches fall back to like I want to run a very structured thing because I can tell every guy exactly what to do. So
hmm
like it looks good for a little bit, and then the next team you play is going to take that away because it's like you've run that over and over and over again. Um, and I think I don't know where I saw the drill, but like it was like a 2v2. So to kind of work on this, you got like a 2v2, and then you do 4v0 up top.
Mm.
So you're run so this is a live 2-on-2 from behind or from wherever you want, and then the other 4 guys have no D. Like, they just have to move and do the actions so that, like, if the on-ball guys can create the 2 or 0, advantage, then these guys are just working on the motion of the set or the principles, and then they can hit a guy for an open pass.
Yeah.
And then the other one was like a 2v0 versus a 4v4. So now you're flipping it and saying, like, all right, the two-man game, like, these guys are just going to work on the fundamentals, get hands free, throw a good pass. Maybe it's a throwback, maybe it's
Mm.
a pump fake. And then now these guys are playing 4v4, no ball, basically, to try to get open. So, like, you know, he's going to set one for him. He's going to come around, and maybe this guy comes, and that's where the look is going to be, or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's kind of like an interesting drill, I guess, to, like, you're not just working on fundamentals of pick setting, but you're also not just going sixes and, like, having
Right.
the D just destroy your offense every game. Um, I actually thought it might be even beneficial to do, like, instead of 2v0 versus 4v4, do 2v1
Yes.
versus, so, like, now you're actually, there's a defender that you have to make a read on. If this, I'll put this guy at X just for easy. So he's like
I'm
on
glad you
ball.
said that because yeah, that was going to be my challenge. Was okay. Have this be a 2-on-1. They can't just find the 2-on-1 and like bait him and throw it. They have to still run as if they're both covered. Your defender is kind of more of a he's the dummy defender. He's kind of that like extra coach or that extra constraint. He
Yeah,
can then choose. Okay, this pick's coming. Whatever. Am
yeah,
I going to bump off it and get under? Now this guy has to do a better job of reacting to that. You
yeah,
create, you put your defenders in a little bit. Now you have kind of a mini you've got kind of this mini quick 4 or 5 on 3 or 5 on 4 because this guy you can let him recover in or he can come up to this top side and defense can rotate behind it. But like this is that really good example of not every drill has to start with the dodger winning the matchup. Like we put almost, I think as coaches, too much emphasis on that. Like either they did or they get a step or they didn't. Obviously there's some value in repping that live, but like I think who your guys are that can do that, right?
yeah,
And a lot of times those are the same guys who have the circular loading bar on their head after they did get the step.
yeah,
So, like your point of make this a 2-on-1, make them have to actually play whatever this action were. Instruct this defender, I want you to either drop off the pick and stay on the ball carrier or hard switch to that. This guy, maybe if he goes underneath, he has to carry it through X. Now these guys read and react to what it is, and you've got again that quick 5 versus 4 on the backside. Like you're going to see that in a game. You should be seeing that in a game. That's like the whole point of why we're doing it, right? Is to create 5-on-4s that turn into 3-on-2s that turn into 2-on-1s. So I think that is like again the biggest change on this. I like the idea, right, of having a little bit less pressure on these guys, but like this example of having a one defender or a defender and a coach or whatever it is here to like force a different thing, force some variability into it. You can't
yeah,
always go underneath. Maybe even it's like as simple as you have a coach here who's going to swivel his hips one way, and it's like if he's cutting off this side, you've got to see it, throw the pump, and then carry it through. Or
yeah,
if the coach is over here and he swings his hips down, now you actually are using the pick, you're carrying it up into a 54, into a 6-on-5. But yeah, I just love like the addition of making this thing still required but easier. Lets them
yeah,
get past the point of okay, we did what we had to do to start. And I keep saying domino. I'm 100% steal job from Monroe and from Sarama on that. But like that sets the chain in motion. Now what we need to do is keep the advantage and extend the advantage.
yeah, and I think you're right. Like, the variability is one thing too, but also, like, having a little bit of pressure on your hands to make that
Mm,
pass,
yeah.
because, like, you will have, like you said, you're never going to set a pick in field lacrosse and run past and get 4 steps of
Yeah.
space. Like,
Yep.
this they're gonna get something they're gonna get a piece of you, or you're gonna maybe have a half a step, but they can still reach their stick and, like, get on your hand. So, like,
Right.
just having that just kind of becoming second nature, be like, anytime I throw a pass in offense, like, I'm just unless we're just, like, getting
Mhm.
touches around the perimeter, like, I'm gonna have somebody kind of, like, making me uncomfortable, and, like, that needs to become comfortable.
Yeah.
And again, the
And
teams we wanna beat are gonna get a piece of us.
yeah. And kinda, like, maybe a hot take, but, like, I like, stick work drills, I think are like, unless that stick work drill is some type of keep away drill, it's
Yeah,
not really all that realistic. Like,
yeah,
you can have guys who look really good in a line drill or in a five-star passing or whatever. Sure, maybe do the plus sign or do the five-star or whatever to, like, just to kinda get the hands moving. But, like, if you're like, "Man, we turn the ball over 20 times, we gotta work on stick work." And then
yeah,
you come out and do a bunch of, 6-line passing, or you're doing line drills or the hamster wheel or whatever, like, you're not getting better at game realistic passing.
yeah,
I the this is I mean, I'm kinda gonna meander a little bit on this one, but, like, you can also structure keep away with some rules or some principles in it. So,
yeah.
a good way I like to do it is,
Oh, do
like,
you want me to share the screen again?
no, you don't have to.
Okay.
You can score it, but maybe it only counts as a point. Like, you get a point per pass, but it only counts as a point if you threw to a guy who came off of an off-ball screen,
Yeah,
or if you yourself were involved in a two-man game before you threw the pass, or if you hit that nations, that's 2 points. Whatever it is, like, time it, do it for 30 seconds to a minute,
yeah,
count what the score was, flip the teams, do it again. I think you get it's so much more, like, value dense than doing 6-line passing for 20 minutes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, like, and like mentally too for kids, like, we know it's important to have good stick skills. Like, none of these things work if you can't pass and catch.
Right.
But like, we remember being high school players. Like, I don't want to do line drills. I don't want to
No.
do skating. Like in hockey, I didn't want to do skating drills. But if you can't do those things, like, none of this whole talk is kind of a moot point.
Right.
Um, and yeah, no, I like the keep away. Kind of wrapping up. We got a couple minutes. I saw a really interesting drill. Again, Jamie Monroe, he's coming up a lot on this podcast or on this recording because of he's been like kind of really instrumental in all these things. But
Yeah.
he does a 4v4 flag football drill. Have you seen that?
Is this one of his, like, backyard on the sport court things, or is this in an
Pro-
actual
uh,
practice?
the video was backyard because they weren't it was boys and girls
Yeah.
and they weren't wearing gear.
Okay.
But you could probably do it. You could probably do it like full go with your guys. So you play 4v4 like small space. All the offensive players have a reversible or a flag tucked into their shorts.
Yep.
And so you have to set an on-ball screen.
Okay.
So that's like script number 1. So the offense always has to set a screen on the ball. The defense always has to bomb it, always has to double.
Yep.
So, like, those are the 2 kind of, I guess, constraints or rules. But if the defense on the double can reach and grab the flag from the ball carrier's, like, shorts, then it's a turnover. So, like, you're not, like, completely screwing the defense on having to double when maybe they shouldn't. And then if it kind of then again the flip side. So if the D gets your flag on that double, like, it's a turnover and the other side gets it. But if you can bounce away and get away from them
Now
quick
you
and
have a
move it,
3-on-2 or
now
whatever.
now
Yeah.
you have an advantage. You have a 3-on-2, and now the D has to rotate, and you have to find the
Yeah.
open guy. And I was like, that's like a really fun way to, like, maybe take the next level from, like, a keep away drill to,
Right.
like, now we're playing lacrosse. So, like, I like it now because it's not a drill, it's actually playing,
Yeah.
right?
No, for sure. And I think that's, like, perfect application for some of the small group stuff that you guys
Yeah.
do, or,
Yeah.
you see, like, I think that's fun, right? It's
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
intensity, it's high rep, but it's, like, it is actually realistic. And, yeah, you might get some pushback from kids like, "Oh, well, coach, he's not gonna have a penny on his waist." And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't care. We're teaching you to close that gap and get in his
Yeah.
hands and stay
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
He does a similar drill, uh where, yeah, it's a 4-on-4, but it's a forced double in the two-man game, and then you just are kind of pushing it from the side into a
Yeah.
3-on-2. We did that a lot last year. Goltz's big thing that he loves to yell is fold the page. So you on your backside, like it's 2 versus 2. Those guys have to fold over and kind of show help. The defense, you can have one of the two guys come in and recover and crash to make it a 3-on-3. But like, I just think it again, principles based, but a lot of where I'm excited to play with this more is like learn how to do it more effectively from the defensive perspective, because
Yeah.
there are still some of those constraints or little rules or little gimmicks you can put in drills to teach concepts defensively too. Obviously
Yeah.
we spent the bulk of the time talking offense, but I do think this is applicable on the defensive end too.
And maybe there's something to that too, because in basketball, like you don't specialize offense and defense. Like you
Yeah,
play both, like you have a role on both sides of the court, offense and defense. So like guys on offense, yeah, sure, like you maybe don't have your center up top unless you're UConn, like running the coming off the screens and like running things.
right,
But like the guys that are playing offense and setting a pick and running the actions have also played it on the defensive side and been taught how to like play it so they
right.
can see that what coverage is happening. Like, oh, I can see this guy's about ready to like step up on me, or they're both kind of dropping back, so like I know to shoot or whatever,
Yeah,
because like they've done it on the other side of the ball. Whereas like from the moment like a parent signs their kid up in Minnesota for lookout, it's like he is an attackman, so send him down to the other end and do finishing drills for 45 minutes,
yep.
and like
The
never
defense is
has.
gonna run around cones for 40.
And so like, and then you get to high school and they're like they can't see a bomb coming, they can't
Right.
see a switch coming, whereas like if you were playing defense a lot you would see it happening.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that's fun, and I think, again, people say sixes isn't lacrosse or whatever, but, like, I do think
Yeah,
people can benefit, especially the younger ages, from playing more sixes.
I agree. I agree.
Because yeah, you get kind of that basketball idea of having to be a two-way player. I
Hmm.
know we're like kind of coming up on it. We didn't talk a ton about constraints. I sent you that drill the other day.
Yeah.
I know we've talked a lot about like what are some cool ideas for that. Do you want to maybe spend a few minutes talking
Yeah.
through some other options? So like everybody uses you can only have this space, or you have to make two passes or whatever. Like those are good examples of constraints and
Yeah.
drills. Um, I think it's been kind of fun to look at different ones. So just a couple ones off top. Scoring rules. So it's like more points if you do whatever this desired action is that you're trying to teach. The battleship scoring, I think, was one that at least in my circle down here, got people to be like, "Oh, this is actually pretty cool. I can see how I can use that." That's where you gotta do it as like again, battleship. You need 5 hits to sink it. You got to score 5 different ways to win the drill. Um, I think another really fun one though that I don't see often is like a pass maximum. You can only
Mm.
throw 3 passes. And again, like if you're trying to get people to kind of hunt skips, especially on man up, uh, I think that one's kind
Yeah,
of fun.
I like that, I
The
like
other
that.
one that I've been trying to do, and like shout out to Golds for this one, but it's like if you do the thing we're trying to get you to not do, an extra defender is going to get released. So
Yeah.
instead of throwing the ball forward, you throw the ball back. Now we have a defensive guy who's in like a cage of cones and he's out. And now you're playing 6-on-7 or 4-on-5 or whatever because you did it
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah,
What are some
I
other ones you've been using or you're excited to use?
yeah, I really like that pass maximum because I think sometimes we discourage not even hunting skips, but like we discourage players to like demand the ball and like go get to the rack, like get
Yeah,
to like beat your guy, like or do something. Like I think everybody loves to be the sixth guy on offense of a good offense and just like you get your 20 points a year because you had your stick up.
yeah,
But like, oh, I got to give that to Nick because he's going to initiate. And it's like, it's always, well, then every time they get it and like they might actually have like a redodge opportunity or a
right.
shooting opportunity, but they're scared of their like own shadow, so they just
Mhm.
pass it to the next guy, like the next guy will take care of it. So the
Yeah,
maximum is like, oh shit, I got the third pass, and that's the maximum, and now I have to be the one to score because
right.
again, looking at it from a defensive coordinator's perspective, they know who the worst player on your offense is, and they're gonna dare that player to dodge on you.
Yeah.
Like they're not gonna let your best player just do whatever he wants all game. So it's like
Right.
I like that pass maximum.
Well, and, like, let's
Um,
be efficient too. If we are gonna be defeatist and say we're not a hotbed, we can't pass and catch like they can in Maryland, every time we throw a pass, we're risking turning the ball over, so let's throw fewer passes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's just like lean into the like make your weakness a strength kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, what constraints? I've really liked like multiple goals or kind of like two like kind of overlapping drills.
Okay.
PMAC ran a great one at training where we had 2 nets kind of like on the left side of the box and like if you look at your offensive zone, kind of like on each like a net on the wing line GLE. And then there's cones right down the middle. So you have like two separate things happening. So you have like blue team has 4-0 and white team has 3D on one side and it's opposite on the other side. So you throw one in and
Oh,
it's
that's
4v3 and
yeah.
there's a goalie in the cage. And if there's a goal or a miss shot, you throw the ball to the other side and then they
Mhm.
play. So it just alternates. If there's a save or a turnover, that side has to clear to the other grouping. So now you have like a clear ride situation, like mini to
Yeah.
get the four. So the coach doesn't always throw it in, and you could probably say like, okay, it's 3v3 or 4v4. Like you don't have to make it a
But so
numbers.
if I'm blue team, I have to score 2 goals on one net and 2 on the other, or so like,
No, no. Like so,
you're
like
always
if
going
you're
the same way.
You're always on the same
Okay.
side. So, like, your offense is on one goal and your defense is on the other
Yeah, yeah,
goal.
yeah.
And so, like, if I'm the blue team and I get the ball, we're playing O, and I take a shot and white team saves it, they have 3D and a goalie that's clearing to their
Okay,
white
so it's like a
offense.
mini version of what's
It's
Horn
like
Horn was like my remember his presentation on, like,
yeah,
"Here's my best drill," and he's got it's off a face off, if it goes backwards, you have to clear, if it goes
yeah,
forward, you push a fast
yeah,
break.
the Titan drill or
A
whatever he
Titan drill,
called
yeah,
it.
it kinda
It
sounds
it
like a Titan variant.
yeah, it's kind of like it's almost like it's like Jenny a
Yeah,
little bit without like a player dropping out because they're actually like clear like everybody stays in the drill till you wholesale. Like you could sub on the fly guys too,
right.
but um I think it what I like about it is that, and I don't know if you'd consider this a constraint or not, but like you're working on something like an unsettled situation, but you don't just get to like when the rep is over, we stop and we set up a new group. Like you're kind
Mhm.
of getting into it from like something else happening. So it's like I
Yeah,
might get a 4-on-3 from the coach, or it might be a clear right away from my defense got to stop on the other side of the field.
mhm.
And now like we're not just standing in a corner pregame 43s where like it's the same thing over and over.
Right.
So it's like a little bit more of like
It
decision
promotes the
making.
variability and, like, the contextualization of the
And
different
it like, on top of that, like, I think it adds more value to the defense in a 4-on-3 situation because they're getting their 4-on-3s, but, like, again, at a certain level, like, you're gonna get just destroyed as a
Yeah,
defense 4-on-3 against a good team, like, or
right.
a capable team. So it's like if you do get maybe you knock down a pass and you pick up a GB, like, you get some clearing and,
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I gotta pick up this ground ball, I gotta find space and just get it across the field." That's
Yeah.
maybe an
I think
overpass. You
the
could, like
lens of where that's for sure a constraint is, like, your starting location is always different, right?
yeah.
You're not
Yeah,
3 guys across the middle running, working on your
yeah,
V break.
yeah,
You're sometimes you're in that corner because you threw you bananaed out with the goalie, you threw the over and, like,
yeah,
"Oh, now there's a new ball and we've gotta get back in and,
yeah,
recover back to the hat." Like, so I think that's a fun one. Um, Starting location, though, I think is another one. We've talked ad nauseum about this, but, like, again, this idea of, okay, how do you cover Gus Bell in practice? Well, put him on one knee or put the defender stick in between his hands, and then the one on one rep or whatever, or the
yeah,
starting thing of your 4-on-3 or your 4-on-4 drill is like he's got to bounce his feet and re-attack. Um, or the other way, you might give the guy a step on a defender if it's your, sophomore fourth attackman against your committed number one pole. You start that pole 2, 3 steps behind the guy, and you let the offensive player dictate when the drill starts instead of going off the whistle. That I think has been a really fun
yeah,
one, and you get some deception because like guys can kind of throw some hezzies or some like head fakes on it. Uh, but
it
like just start the guy behind the guy. If one guy's constantly winning, make it harder for him.
Yeah, and as an offensive coach, I've had to really catch myself, like, wanting to do more 4-3-3-2-5-4, like,
Mhm.
because it looks good, right? I
Yeah,
love that
yeah,
my
you win
offense can
more.
move the ball,
Yeah.
but then they don't learn how to create advantages because they just get one at practice
Right.
every day.
Yeah. No, that's
Um
fair.
and so I've liked also, like, starting even and then sending in an extra D. So they're actually playing
Mhm.
their off they're doing things man down, like, so adding
Yep.
players a constraint, right? Adding or taking away players, but, um, like, making it almost unfair for the offense to be like, "Okay, they have an extra basically a free slide, so now you really need to find an open guy, like,
Right.
away from the ball because, like, you're not gonna like, even if you win your matchup, you didn't win your matchup."
Yep, for sure. And I think this is kind of related to the giving the advantage or taking the advantage away. Like you can make the player either with the ball or covering the ball do something before it happens. So like the clip I sent you the other day that we were talking about using was like you have two cones behind the offensive player. If the defender runs to the low cone, freeze and take top side and go, and then now you've got a 4-on-3 that becomes a 4-on-4 because that guy is recovering back.
Yeah.
Kind of pushes some urgency. If that guy runs to the top cone, get underneath and try to get your advantage that way. Um, you could make it to where like you have to unlock the ability to even pass the ball by coming off of a screen or something. Like I think again, those are you make it harder or easier on the offense or the defense, but like you can teach the things that you want to see.
Yeah.
And again, just like I guess summarizing this topic, I think the most fun thing is that turns practice from you laying out a bunch of cones and like crossing your arms, being like, "Yeah, it looks sick," and then barking instructions in the game to like flipping it. You get to bark all your instructions and have all your control in practice, and then in the game, you kind of just get to sit back and like watch your kids actually play lacrosse.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's so much more fun, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to, like, continue to go down this path and explore it. I'm very glad that like, this was so much fun to talk
Yeah,
to
no
somebody
doubt,
else
no
who, like,
doubt.
cares about it because
Yeah.
I've noticed more resistance to it here. I wonder how much of that is just, like, hockey culture, like Minnesota culture, but, um, yeah, maybe people just said, "Oh, that's different," and they hated it back home, but,
Yeah.
I just
Well,
like these conversations I think are so much fun. And I think you get so much more out of this than like saying, here's my two favorite plays that I used to run.
yeah.
Like now the wheels are spinning and like I can't wait to get to practice today to run a couple of these drills or, some of these nuances and make my guys play 5-on-6
Yeah.
or, try some of these. Hey, when you cut through in this drill, you have to set a pick after. Like, I can't wait.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm excited. Like, I wish I was like going to practice right now for sure. But yeah, we'll do this again for sure. I
Oh, yeah.
think it's good content, and like whether or not we have good content that comes out of it, it's just good to talk lacrosse with other people and not have it necessarily be like my coaching staff or your
Right.
coaching where it's like we're worried about what's going to happen. Like the game, this is just more like whiteboard, John Gruden whiteboard discussion.
Yeah.
Like so. I loved, it, appreciate it, and yeah, we'll set another one of these up soon.
Beauty. All right, man. Well,
Uh,
it's good seeing you again.
you
Always
too.
fun talking lax with you. We'll
Yeah.
talk soon.
All right, later.
Peace.